Thank you and welcome to GLA Black Caucus series, virtual speaker series. Um, Coming up, these are our, okay, now I can't, trying to move the screen. So I'll just tell you, I was trying to move the screen here. Oh, wait a minute. There we are. Still learning uh, Google stuff. Well, coming up on March 14th, we will have Sarah Hunt Blackwell from the ACLU of Georgia. She'll be speaking on policy and advocacy analysis for challenged books. On March 20th, Katrina Davis Kendrick will be speaking on life work coaching as a professional development option. And on April 10th, Amanda Lethbridge will be speaking on practicing mindfulness to safeguard your peace. And if you have other speakers or topics you want me to reach out to or try, just send an email to the Black Caucus link. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And so today we have Tamika Bars, who is currently the Associate Dean for Parental Library Services at Georgia State University. She began her career at North Carolina State University. She has served on numerous committees within ALA, including the ALA Executive Board, ALA Council, Planning and Budget Assembly, Council Orientation Committee, and on and on and on. um,
Service is my love language.
and so, better not say that. We'll be finding you something else to do.
I have enough.
And so she's on the Live Learn X subcommittee and the Lois and Gregory Wood Fellows Program Committee. She received her biology degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and earned an MLS from North Carolina Central University. She was part of the first cohort of Spectrum Scholars in 1988 and co-founder of GLA Black Caucus. Um, I will turn it over to you, and thank you for.
All right. Thank you. And I know people are probably either finishing up lunch or starting lunch. But if you don't mind and you are willing, if you could turn on your cameras either some of the way or part of the way, just so I I like to have a conversation versus slides at you. So I would like to see people's faces versus boxes with initials. Um, but good afternoon, everyone. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. And a special thanks to Loria for the invitation to speak with you all today. And be careful what you tell Loria, because this started off when I let her know that I had the opportunity to be a keynote speaker during the Black Caucus of ALA Fireside Chat celebrating its 55th year. So they're celebrating 55 years this year. And then when I sent her that, all of a sudden, now here I am speaking with all of you. So today I just kind of want to share with you, I have some notes here, but if you have questions and things like that, please, like I said, I want this to be more of a conversation. But to kind of let you know that my journey to where I am today as an associate dean has definitely not been a straight path or easy. I think sometimes we forget when we see people in certain positions, like that it was actually a journey to get there. But I do know some of you here today, and you may know bits and pieces of this, but I hope throughout this conversation today, I'll provide you with some more information about me and my journey, or if nothing else, what I would hope mostly is that I give you a nugget or two to help you reflect on your own personal journey and leadership. So let's get started. I'm just gonna, like I said, take you on a brief journey, starting before I was even a librarian to where I am now. And through this, we'll talk a bit about just why I chose librarianship, what drives me, some challenges, and then how I lead, and then take some time for Q&A and conversation with all of you. So let's begin. So why I chose to work in libraries, it is not the typical, ooh, I love books. That was not it. Or, ooh, I read a lot. That won't it either. And I know that's like a lot of people's, backgrounds with that. And it wasn't because I went to the library and it was my safe space and I just knew that's where I wanted to be. That's some people's stories. That's just not mine. Okay. Lovely stories, just not what mine was. And it definitely wasn't one where I saw librarianship as I do now as an important like institution to foster lifelong learning and equity. Like that was not it. So the real deal, I was a biology undergraduate major, right? Junior year in college, yeah, I knew med school was not going to happen because organic chemistry was a challenge. And so trying to figure out what that next thing was going to be. I was determined to just go ahead and finish and graduate with that biology degree, which has served me well. Just getting into librarianship because there's few of us that started from the science area. A lot of times it's English and history and things like that. So I was trying to figure it out. College, graduate, need to work. I had worked in a library as an undergraduate student before the days of the 24-hour libraries at UNC. They had the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift. That's the shift I worked, me and another student. We were the only ones. I think that's odd now looking back, like they trusted us in that building to shut it down and everything. And it was just two of us. But through that, I started appreciating like helping people find the information they need. Like I told you, I wasn't one that was like reading every book that there was. But what I did get joy out of was helping those people and helping the ones who had to like, they were working jobs. So they were the ones that were coming in later in the evening, right? So it wasn't like they could go ask like the librarians or a faculty member because nobody on campus but us at this point. Some of the athletes who had come in there. So just different segments of people that I was able to help as an undergraduate student. So that was kind of like my introduction to libraries, but I still didn't say, ooh, I want to be a librarian. But as I graduated, I got a job in the library, but not at UNC. I tried. See, this is part of that journey where I was like, I'm an alum. I applied for many jobs there and did not get it. So I wound up working for North Carolina State University, a rival school, in the acquisitions department. So I was a staff member. So I ordered books, then that went over to, we started off receiving books. It was a promotion if you were able to order books back then. So went to that. And then at that point, my supervisor asked me if I wanted to go to library school. And I was like, what's that? You're working in a library, working with people, and I was like, no, thank you. But so in working, while I was working, I was like seeing decisions being made and things like that. And I was like, oh, if I want to be part of the conversation of how things happen, then I'm going to need to be in a different type of role. And that's when I started looking. I was like, okay. And then fortunately, the Spectrum Scholarship through ALA, for those who aren't familiar with that, that is a program that's still ongoing. We'll see how long, because a lot of the money comes from IMLS. But it was to help diversify the profession. And so the nice thing about that scholarship is that they broke up the tuition for the fall and then the spring, and they gave you the money. They gave you, the individual, the money. So if you needed it to pay your tuition, or if you needed it, if you had children and you needed a babysitter so you could attend class, you could use that. And that was the part of the Spectrum things, like diversity, like helping people get over some of the hurdles and the challenges of getting their master's degree. So I bought a computer, right? Because I was taking evening classes and weekend classes at North Carolina Central. And so that's what I needed to help me get through that time. And so through that, went to library school, worked full time, did an internship at Duke. I was crazy. I had lots of energy. I wish I had some of that energy now. But through that, figured that I still wanted to be in academic libraries. I did, before I started library school, work in a public library for a little bit. So I've done that as well. But the majority of my professional career has been in academic libraries. So I continue in this profession because despite all the misconceptions that people have about librarianship and what we do, I see the importance of what we do in helping, especially times like these, providing that information to help people no matter what they're trying to do, whether it's like educate themselves on an issue, workforce development, whatever it is. I just see the value in what we do, and also the value in having a diverse group of people who are able to help them. So switching over a little bit, so went through that, and then start seeing, like, I don't know how you all feel, but like applying for jobs, especially after library school, it was like entry-level job, but must have experience. How am I supposed to have experience if it's entry level, right? And so trying to figure out how to get those type things to talk about if it wasn't directly that. So some of the things that I did during that time, this is where like my association volunteering helped. So I could say that I led a project. I led people through a project. Being like the chair or something, I could say that I had to manage a budget. So was it a $3 million budget? No, but I had to manage a budget. I had to work with vendors, planning events and things like that. So those are the types of things that I started trying to put in my portfolio to help like get to that next hurdle. Because once you have like that entry level position, then you know trying to get that first leadership position is the same type of thing that you run into. Must have had experience leading. And I'm like, no, I'm entry level. Like, how do I make that jump, right? How do I get to that next hurdle? So while I was reference and instruction librarian for engineering, that's where my science background came in handy. A lot of people didn't want to do engineering, right? They don't, right? They don't want to have that role. But me being a science major, I was like, yeah, it's enough science. I'll apply and got that position. But what I did, my assistant department head at the time was over our interns that worked the reference desk. And I was like, well, how can I get where I'm like supervising, right? So one of the things that I did is I asked her if I could help her. Can I help with the process? So she, like most of us, had a million things to do and was like, yes, I could use the help. And so she gave me like that first opportunity to go through the hiring, training of interns. And then sure enough, later it became my my responsibility to schedule the desk because they work mainly nights and weekends, right? So that gave me that opportunity to say, now I've had experience training, hiring, even disciplinary actions and things like that, having those types of conversations. And so with that, I just kind of want you all to realize that leadership isn't really always about the titles, right? You can lead from whatever role you have, and it can be impactful. And so I was able to use that to then get like that next leadership role that was even in the title. So I moved from reference to, I worked at North Carolina A&T. So Aggie Pride for any of those out there. And so for those that don't know, it's a historically Black university in Greensboro, North Carolina. And so I was there as a department head for reference. So I came from a very large institution, North Carolina State, right, where the number of librarians in our reference department equaled the total number of librarians at A&T. So there was like 20 some librarians, and that's about how many total was at A&T, whereas at NC State, it was probably like closer to like 100 employees, just to kind of give you the difference. So I worked at a large institution and then went to a smaller one and really appreciated that. From there, but I also saw there how my leadership had to change. I was used in that big institution, like we got to do like on to the next, like what's the next thing that we're doing? And my boss there was like, we don't work that fast. Like slow your roll. Hey, great ideas, but chill, right? And so then like, oh my gosh, like how do you transition to that? The funny thing is I had a librarian who started the same time that I did, that I didn't know I was going to have a brand new librarian. And she was like me, like all the ideas, like coming at me, firing away. And I was like, here I am, want to move on those things, but I have a supervisor that's like, chill. So I had it where, no lie, I had a notebook on my desk. I was like, anytime you have ideas, come write it in the notebook. Right. And so we would, during our meetings, would like visit those and be like, okay, let's prioritize all the ideas this year and only present one or two so that we can move forward. So that's how I had to like kind of change like how I led within the organization that I was working in, which was different. So I was there a couple of years and then transitioned to the Environmental Protection Agency. So I did that for 5 years as a contractor for the EPA. And that was a whole different experience, right? So now you're contract work. And you're working at a federal institution, but your contract is late, so you don't follow the federal holidays and things like that. And it was like double crazy because the contract was actually through the library school at UNC. So I was working for a state institution, but housed at a federal organization, which I think that's why that has helped me here at Georgia State, where it's like I'm on the perimeter campuses, but I'm under this other umbrella of Georgia State University, after the consolidation. So all those things can kind of help you along the way, these challenges that you may face. So I was at the Environment and Protection Agency, and through there, it helped with different type of leadership, I would say, because that was trying to manage a contract, right? Trying to figure out the bureaucracy between the state and what we did and the feds. There you have to write, you submit every few years, you got to get a new contract, right? So UNC was fortunate. They had it for, I don't know how many years, 30 years, 40 years. And so it's a lot of pressure. You don't want to be the one in the leadership role and then UNC doesn't get it anymore, right? And so I was like, I'm going through one of those bidding times, and then after that, I got to get it. I got to get out of here because that was a lot of stress. And so loved the people, loved working there because in that organization, there were 4 full-time librarians, but the rest of the operation were from interns. So interns at the library school at UNC. While I was there, speaking of like diversity and trying to be inclusive, I was like, Central, where I went, is right down the street. Why? And they're also a state institution. Like, why can we not hire students from Central as well? Now, understanding that most of the students that went to Central were, like when I went, worked full time. So they weren't necessarily able to fit in an internship that was during the day. But that wasn't everyone, right? So we can't make that whole assumption. And so we opened it up and we were able to work it out. We're intra-institution to be able to pay students from North Carolina Central as well so that they got that opportunity, because it's a prestigious internship and people get hired from that. Like people see that on their resume, especially in the North Carolina area, and they're like, it just gives you a little edge. And so I wanted to share that edge, of course, with students that went to the same library school that I did. And so I was able to kind of do that and move that program forward. And they are still doing that now, where they are extending the opportunities to Central. And we were able to also extend the opportunities to UNC Greensboro, who also has a library school. So, and some people live closer to the area where EPA was, and so they were able to take advantage of that as well. So that was something good about that. Any questions so far before I move into anything?
None in the chat.
Okay, because I can't see everything. Like you, LaLauria, I'm like, well, hands be right. Like, okay. So, so EPA. So when I wanted to transition, here's where some of the challenges were. So I was at the EPA for 5 years, right? And then what happened is I wanted to transition back to academia. Well, folks I had been out of the game for 50 years. So it became an issue that I didn't know what was going on in academic libraries anymore. And I was like, wow, okay. And the other challenge that I have, because contractor work, you tend to get a higher salary than non-contract work because it's not as guaranteed. So then I had priced myself out of certain positions. as well. So smaller schools who may have been willing to have a conversation with me, I was not willing to take a pay cut for that. But then the larger schools, like I said, because I was gone for 5 years, that I wouldn't be able to then lead people in academia anymore. Imagine that. And so that's when I started casting a wider net. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have to leave North Carolina. I had been there since undergrad, right? All my professional career, I've been in North Carolina in one area or the other within like an hour and a half, 2 hours of each other. And so I think this is the other part that people tend to not realize. Like, I can't tell you how many jobs I applied for because I had a spreadsheet, right? And I was like, apply here. Like, there were a number that I did not get a call back from at all. I had some where I made like the screening. And then others, I got to like the final 3. And then that's the disappointing part, right? But that was also when I learned like, oh, they fly you out at these positions. Like things were just very different in that process of how you did the interviews. And so that's when I wound up coming to Georgia. So I was like, okay, I've done the big universities, done, government. And so moving into a smaller community college to your institution is where I thought I was coming to, right? Which I did I came in 2013 to do that. So I will say that transition during that time, now I said I'm going to take a pay cut. Well, I kind of took a small pay cut to come here initially. But looking overall, as far as like leading, I was like, I need to get my foot in the door and get that position so that I can then move up. What was fortunate for me at the time is between the time I had applied and gone through the process and the time the offer came through, I had gotten a raise. And so I was able to negotiate. And that was my first time really negotiating. Please negotiate. All that somebody can do is tell you no. It's not going to then be like, oh, they asked for more money. Now I don't want you anymore. That's not the case. But that was one of those things that I had to get over, like trying to advocate for your worth, right? And so was able to do that, came to at the time it was Georgia Perimeter College. Thought I was going to be at a small institution and was loving that. And then in 2016, consolidation. Woo-hoo. And so all of a sudden now I'm again at a large institution. But as I told you before, I had worked at a large institution before. And so that transition for me wasn't as difficult for some of my colleagues who had only worked at a smaller institution and had only worked at Georgia Perimeter College. And that unknown was just a bit much. And plus the requirements and things are different. So, so here I am today. But I would say that looking at my leadership style, I say it's probably a combination of some. I feel like I'm more like a servant leader. So I tend not to ask my staff to do anything that I either have not done or willing to do or willing to help them do. All right. So, so that also means I ain't going to ask them to do nothing crazy. Because if I'm going down for something big. I'm going down for something crazy at work. And so, and in doing that, I also feel like My leadership style is collaborative as well. So we're as much as possible fostering teamwork, shared decision making with my leaders who work with me, and then encouraging innovation and professional development. So in that, like, I believe in empowering staff, and that's like all staff, right? So not just the librarians or not just tech people, like all staff. I believe in that, equipping everyone to skills that they need for the current job, but also preparing them for what may be next. Whether that next is within the organization, within my department, or somewhere else. So I am always trying to work with my staff on what's next. And sometimes what's next is I'm good for another couple of years in this role. And that's fine too, right? But if there's aspirations, like I mentioned before, where it's like trying to get a leadership role and they're asking for leadership experience and that's not what your current job is, then looking to see if there's opportunities to do where you can lead a project, right? Give you more responsibilities, but I'm also careful not to give people responsibilities outside of what they are getting paid for, because I don't want to take advantage of someone's skills and kindness. So trying to balance that with opportunities is a thing. Also, I tend to also advocate for my team both internally and externally. So both within the library and outside of it. All right. And so that may be trying to get them, you know, recently, one of the things was trying to elevate the positions of um, my department heads. So now they're department heads. They weren't department heads. And so doing things like that, knowing that a lot of times things don't happen quickly, but not giving up that fight to keep doing what I believe is the right thing. Most people know about the advocating externally, like trying to build partnerships and outreach like that. But I tend to like, don't forget the internal for your staff as well as a leader. Some challenges with all of that, I also feel like there's constant struggles with budget, right? So not being able to pay people what I think they should be paid. Or when massive budget cuts come, the eliminating of positions. I've been in that position before too, which is not, of course, a fun place to be in. And so with that, it comes like a lot of emotional labor, right? Especially as an empath, as myself, take on everyone and be like, oh my gosh, if we don't keep this person, or, you know, it's like they have mouths to feed and bills to pay. And so trying to be mindful of people, but also be mindful of the business, because libraries are a business, no matter how much we try to act like we're not. We're a business, and trying to work that out. I think the other thing, it has always been a challenge, but I think it will really be a challenge now, is with DEI. So the backlash and being inclusive and things like that. And so trying to figure out how to still achieve our goals around all this. So it may be one, reframing the narrative a little bit. We can be creative with words just like they are. You know, we've seen it over the years, belonging, inclusive, diversity. So what is the next thing going to be? And in the meantime, still doing what we do. Um, I think it's going to be especially important to build strong alliances and trying to figure out who else is still trying to do the same things that we are, so that we can understand and move forward. And then also making sure, like within our roles in our libraries, that we are being as inclusive as possible, whether that's who we're serving, who we're hiring, who we're working with, um, and all of that. So let's see. So I would just like to kind of remind you before I open it up for just some conversation is remember that you can be a change agent from any seat that you're in, right? So, and then also make sure that you are also building your skills for any future and current leadership that you are doing, whether that's communication, being resilient, taking initiatives, and things like that. So,
I have a question.
yes.
Could you give us what the back and forth looked like in your salary negotiation? Not necessarily telling us what you were paid, but like the percentage or the number, the amount more that you asked for, and then how they countered and how you countered if there was any countering going on.
Yes. So, it was, they gave me a number. And then what I thought about is, can I live with that number? Maybe. But what was the the bottom line, what would be the number that I would need to have so that I felt like I could live the way that I wanted and also have what I felt like I deserved, right? And so, and then I went higher. So I had my number and then I went like, I think I went like 5,000 higher than that. So in case they wanted to negotiate, then I was still at my number, right? But also knowing that I had to be willing, I had another job. So I could be like a little bit more thanks, but no thanks on some situations. Now, when you don't have a job, you got to take those things into consideration. But I would suggest going a little higher in case there is some negotiation, so you have that wiggle room.
So your lowest number was higher than what they, but then you went higher than the lowest number. Okay.
I went higher than my lowest number.
So did they?
hmm We
So what?
met in the middle.
Okay.
We met in the middle between my lowest number and what I had initially asked for.
So did you counter or did you just say okay? They went to the middle after my first number.
And then I went ahead. Now, today's person might have done some more
Yeah.
negotiation.
Okay.
Me today. Me then, 15 years ago, that was a big step for me.
So I just want to follow up on what you said about the contract or the internships that uh, you made sure they were available to. Uh, was it A&T or
North Carolina Central students,
North
yes.
Carolina Central students?
Mhm.
Would you say doing things like that is a way to get around DEI? And, for those who aren't, I guess, what training that would you say supervisors need, or do they just need to be mindful?
I think being mindful of ways, like a lot of times we're doing DEI stuff. We're just not calling it calling it that, right? And especially those of us who are in of the minority anyway, like we are mindful of it all the time.
Yeah.
It's not anything new. Like, so we're always navigating situations. And so that was a way for us, I felt, for us to be more inclusive. Because believe it or not, like North Carolina Central, even though that's also a historically Black college, but the library school, um, the majority of the students were not minorities. So, but I still felt it was important to work with an HBCU because even though those students there were not minorities, the majority of them, they were students who had to work full time. You know, there were other things besides race that were helping us be more inclusive.
And Karen has raised her hand. Go ahead, Karen.
So a segue into that, a bit of that conversation. It sounds like you developed the skill of career resilience, which is the ability to bounce back from challenges, in our professional lives and, give us strength to adapt to difficulties in the face of adversities. And everything doesn't have to be an adversity, but, just a bounce back period. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you've developed that skill based on your ladder and the things that you've been through. So in this time and landscape, what can you tell this group about maintaining career resilience?
It's tough because I will tell you right now, I'm not feeling real resilient, to be honest, right?
Right, exactly. Right? That's an honest answer, right?
It's an honest answer. I'm like right now, I'm in that. What are we going to do? How is this going to impact, not just me, but all of us? And so right now I'm more in the, okay, don't react. Don't like get all anxious and anxiety, like trying to tell myself, like, stop reading all this stuff. Like, let it settle down, and so then, like, what is it so that I know exactly what we're dealing with? Because right now, we don't know. Right now, it's a whirlwind, and it changes so quickly. So I'm at this moment trying to, like, okay. But then, Karen, also thinking, like, oh, we've done this before. We've been here before, like, remind myself. Like, there weren't, like, it's just in the past 5-10 years that it was these big DEI initiatives. Before that, we've been in situations like this where we had to navigate and figure it out and make sure that we're at the table when decisions are being made. And I think that's the thing, remembering and making sure that we at least have a voice when all this stuff is happening and changing.
We've been here before. We've been through things like this. And so we're survivors. So just get through it, right?
Do what you need to do. Go to the spa, go in your prayer corner, whatever it is that it is, but we've been here. Some of us, it may be real new for us, right? Depending on where we are in our careers. And so I feel like it's going to be especially important that we continue to have conversations like in these types of forum where we can support and help each other through this.
and have wine.
And have
No,
I
yeah,
said whatever it is you need to
yeah.
do.
It can be exhausting, so I would just add to that. Like I'm just taking extra days. I was out yesterday, and I don't have a lot of leave, but I'm at the point where if I have to take a day or two without, um, without pay, without leave or whatever, I'm doing it because you have to self-preservation, not just the other part. Not.
Yeah, because if they always say if your cup ain't full, how you gonna help somebody else?
Mhm.
Yep. The centering and coping, which includes healthy lifestyle, nutrition, and all that stuff, because that's centering yourself first. And like Tamika said, to be able to be good for anybody else, you got to start with self, get yourself together. So centering and coping is definitely one way I think, to get through this. Yeah. And connections. You talked about having connections and those social connections and stuff like that, and compassion for each other and other people, to be able to use some sort of empathy towards each other, to help, uplift everybody,
Mm-hmm.
Another question is, we know that librarianship we are I think we are 5%, maybe 5 to 8%. So we mostly work in white spaces. As a leader, have you had resistance to your leadership based on being a minority or being, whatever minority category you want to use, age, sex, race?
Yes, and yes.
Oh, wow. Hopefully not all at the same time.
No, I think early on it was definitely age, because people felt like I was in management and leadership before my time should be. Like you know, I I was a reference librarian for 4 years before I then transitioned into management. So for some people that wasn't long enough
Hmm.
to do. And then where I went to manage at A&T, they were long-term employees. So they had been there a long time in a certain way for doing things and everything. And so it was more like, who's this young whippersnapper coming in here trying to tell us what to do? So I've had it there. Um, I've had it also, I feel like, as a woman as well. Um, and funny enough, from women and men, because I do know some people, like some women, prefer to have a male boss. And so I've had it that way too. I can't say that it, especially when I first got here, I know there was some race, but I can't like give a concrete example.
Got it.
Like it was just like that feeling, It was like, I know they don't think I can do this. And so, but there was nothing ever overt. It was just kind of like an undercurrent. So I've had those challenges. What has helped me through that sometimes is having my network outside of the organization. Um, People that, as we say, we grew up in this profession together. We're at different places now, different organizations, but we're like definitely supportive of one another. I have people who are like really good friends in the profession who are in public libraries as well. And so sometimes being able to bounce some of these things off of them in their different environment has helped me. I remember the first time that leadership had like a case brought up against me, and I called like 2 or 3 of my friends, and they were like, "Oh, this your first one?" Where somebody said, I was like, I didn't know it was like, what, we hazing to be managers that we got to have like an EEOC thing brought up against us? Like, they're like, oh no, I've had like plenty. And I was like, this is what happens to managers. Like, these are the things that people don't tell you. Right. And so they were able to kind of help me through that. So I was like, okay, I'm discriminating against somebody who's
I have another question.
Yes.
So we talk about generational differences in the workplace, have you seen the shift in the way that, maybe ethically or, the way people think about the different generations about the workforce and authority?
Yes. I would say it's been a change, like hiring people now, like some that are just getting out of library school. It's just like their thought process is different. Like I'm like, we are in-person operation with some remote, like, but they want to come in like and be like, I've been here 2 weeks, I've done great. Can I work remote every day? And I'm like, wait a minute, right? That's not how that's not how we're set up or work. And then, nothing wrong with it, but when it doesn't serve them, they're out. So I feel a year and they're like, deuces, this ain't working. I'm going on to the next thing. And I'm like, wait, what? And so that's one of the main things that I've seen that's different now from when I was hiring before. And I'm like, okay, so to me, that means I feel like we need to engage different and have different conversations with them. It's not like they're wrong. That's how they went through school, like, and then thinking about like some of these people we're hiring, they went through COVID. Like, they're used to being at home. Like, that's their foundation. So now you tell me I gotta go somewhere every day, all day? Like, so it's just different. And so my training myself to be like, are they getting done what they need to get done? Does it matter if it's at 2:00 or 8:00? Does it matter? Really? And so just trying to figure it out, but also work within the confines of what the culture is of the organization that we work in. So, but yes, actually, that's one example. Angela, I think I saw your hand.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. Mike, it's really weird because Karen just touched on exactly pretty much the question I wanted to ask or ask about. But one thing I will say is I always appreciate your candor, Tamika, and I really didn't know you had such a diversity of job positions all over these years. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. But, along those lines, are there opportunities for a lot of the, I don't want to say younger, but newer library people, whatever level, to engage for those who want to try to work remotely fully, maybe try to bring them back in?
Well, unfortunately, the way we're set up here, we have to work.
Okay, so it's already set up that way.
It's already set up. We have up to 2 days that we can work remotely.
Okay.
And so where we try to be flexible now is like schedule. Like, do we really need them here at 8:00? Or is it more beneficial, especially if they're ones that's not morning people, to shift where they're more like a 10 to 7, right? So we have that flexibility. Also, we have more coverage for when the students are here. Thank you. And so that's where we're trying to be more flexible and engaging with it, even though we may not be able to have them work from home as much as they want. So trying to figure out other things. Or having it where they're like involved with more campus activities and functions so that they're actually up and out and they're not
Yeah.
feeling like confined in their workspace. So
Nice. Thank you.
Any other last minute questions? We have about 3 minutes.
woo, that time went fast.
We did. Well, I have a question if you can answer it quickly, or we may have to schedule you for another talk on this
Hey,
topic.
don't you start, Laloria.
But I wanted to ask you how mentorship has served you and what you're doing to make sure others are mentored as well.
Ooh, yes. Mentorship has taught me tremendously in various ways. I would say in a combination. So I've had peer mentors, right, who are like in different positions and different opportunities than what I had, who were able to help me navigate it. So I have a person who's really helped me navigate like ALA and how to put myself in certain uh, positions and roles to get to where I wanted to be, right? So explaining that and being helpful for that. Um, in my profession, I would say I had some early on, and then like a lot of my mentors have now retired. And so now I need some new ones because I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm becoming the ones that I always looked up to, right? And so, but what I try to do is then turn around and help others, like that information that I didn't have. And it can be like just task specifically when people are going to a conference for the first time and they've never been, like helping them understand what it's like, what it is. Like, don't do like me and think you got to go from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., because you at conference and they paying for you to go. Like, it's still work. Like, pace yourself. Like, just those type of things to help beyond task specific things at work.
All right, well, thank you, Tamika, um, telling us about. Oh, I was muting. I was.
Ooh,
uh, thanks everyone for joining, and we thank you, Tamika, for telling us about your journey. Um, Great. Oh, work, mom. Oh, that was one. As a leader, have you had to make a decision related to AI in your organization?
Not yet. We keep asking the questions like, what are we doing with AI? And so we've taken it upon ourselves within my department to just kind of educate ourselves so that we can be ready when the university decides to tell us what we're going to do, not do. So, and so I have a couple of people on my team who like that's a real big interest of theirs, and so they're doing it and then keeping us abreast and informed about it.
Just one final announcement. You may have seen the email about submissions for Trailblazing Black Librarians from Georgia. I know I said that in the wrong order. But if you have anything, we've had a few. Thank you all who've submitted so far. But if there are others you think we should cover in the video series for Trailblazing Black Librarians from Georgia and also in Georgia, um, respond to that fill out the form or just send us a direct email back. And so again, thank you for joining us. Our next meeting is I think March 14th. Let me find it. But I'll be sending out probably next week invitation for that as well. So thanks everyone. This will be posted. Remember to check the blog for announcements as well. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.